This is episode 19 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my friend Ryan Saulle of Freedom Homebuyers. Ryan, welcome to the show. Let's get a high in, and I'm going to read your bio. And how you doing?
How's it going, Jonathan? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. We've known each other for a while. I'm going to give the listeners a little bit of your bio, and then we'll get a little bit more from you. So Ryan's been in the investing world for about 5 years after leaving the Department of Education. His brother, who is the co-founder of the company at Freedom Homebuyers, was in the construction business. Ryan quickly fell in love with it, and we're going to get the numbers after, but they've been going strong since July of 17 as Freedom Homebuyers to really put, a more transparent spin on the home buying business, and we'll get into that. So welcome. It's only been 5 years, huh? You've done a lot.
Yes. So we first flip was the end of 2017. And then right after that, I found my other partner, Michael, and we started the company basically early 2018. So about February of 2018. So going to be 5 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. How did you guys weather the storm of 2018 since you were still new to the business? That's something like for people who get into it in those timeframes, and then the downturn happened. How did you guys do during that time?
But I felt like we did well. We scaled. We probably only did one or two the first year, probably towards like 3. So we weren't that crazy. That was like when our first goal was kind of just flip a house.
Yeah.
Turned into, let's flip a few houses. And then, so I guess less experience helped us there because we weren't sometimes when you know too much, you start thinking, ahead and thought getting a little more conservative. So we kind of jumped in full steam. We just wanted to get a few deals, and we weren't thinking about the market and all that at the time as much, rather than just getting started.
Yeah, that's a really important point, though, is because you just said, we just wanted to flip a house. And that's really especially with flipping, it's so complicated. If you're thinking how you're going to do 10 in the first year before you do your first one, you won't know how hard it is. How did the first one go? What town was it in? And what were the ups and downs of that first flip?
Sure. So I actually was on the renovation side prior to starting it. So I was like a GC for a few properties before we did our first flip, but our very first flip was in Shrewsbury, New Jersey.
Did it change though from being part of the contracting aspect to then being at you have to make this all happen, it's your money involved as well?
Yeah, it did. It's I'm not the handiest, my father's pretty handy. So I came in with construction, I guess, background, a little knowledge, but not a full blown contractor. So I guess I look back at that's a blessing, because sometimes the contractors have a hard time transitioning because they still have that contractor mindset, which it's totally different business. So I guess that helped me not being as handy. So I quickly went from GCing, used that skill, but transferred into how do I scale this rather than how do I do all the work.
Yeah. And when you saw it, your brother was in it first, right? And did you always have an attraction to houses, or did you kind of watch him and be like, I want to do this too, because the 9 to 5 is not what I want?
It was completely random, I would say. So how I got started was he was doing side stuff, because he's a firefighter out in New York. So he was doing stuff on the side, and then one of his friends was flipping the house. That's how we got started on the construction side. Mm-hmm. So he had, I guess, got me involved in real estate, but at that time I had literally no real estate experience, no business experience, and kind of just ran with it from the GC side quickly into the flipping side.
What about the home buying process at the time? Did you feel when you started to look at it as a business, what did you feel was wrong with it, and what were you guys trying to solve? Because I know that's a big part of your value proposition to sellers and for what you guys do as builders, renovators.
Yeah. So at the time, I guess the little knowledge I had, because a lot of that was, I was learning, I was reading a lot of books on it, and the limited knowledge I had, it seemed like a very, I guess you could say, shady industry, or there's a lot of people that aren't transparent. And 5 years later, that couldn't be any more true. So nothing has changed from when I started till now. If anything,
there's more.
It gets worse, as you go. So I think that's kind of the mindset I had going in, how do we do this the right way? And it all started with, like you said, the core values, and, went from there.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's helped you scale? I mean, obviously you have good business acumen. You guys have been able to scale really quickly over years, but I think holding tight on what your values are make it easy to release projects instead of try to buy them all.
Yeah, for sure. I think it helped, and it helps because you see some people come and go in this industry, and a lot of those people that they try to get a quick dollar or whatever you want to call it, scam someone just to make a buck.
Yeah.
I think those are the people that don't last, and I think sometimes we've passed up on deals or it didn't work out, or we stuck to our core values and missed an opportunity, and I was always okay with that. That's kind of what we do. There's always the next one, and we feel like helping people is first, and then the business side comes second.
Yeah, I think the majority of people who get into investing just focused on the money aren't focused on the seller, when we're buying homes, and that leads to problems. What do you think the difference is between how you walk into a home, other against like the people that we're talking about who are just there to make the quickest cash deal? What are you guys doing that's different? Probably similar to what I do. Obviously, we're friends. We've talked about it a lot, but I'm interested in what it was and what it's developed into, in terms of how do you help people when we also want to make a profit as an investor?
I guess it's always transparency. So no matter what situation, obviously we've grown since the first one, but it's been the same transparency from the beginning. If anything, we've got more, knowledge as we went, and we've pivoted into, other sides of the business, which helps us, I guess, give more options. But we try to be like we're trying to turn into like a one-stop shop. So it doesn't matter what your situation is. And if the situation doesn't work for us, that's transparency as well. We just, hey, this is not for us. Here's why. And we suggest listing it, et cetera, whatever. But I think just being transparent, same thing with wholesaling. We wholesale some properties, but even that we put in like, hey, we're not going to buy this. But, we have partners and other people that we could try to get it out, give us a few weeks. So very transparent. I think that's the biggest issue, especially on the newbies and wholesaling. And you see that's the easiest industry to get into.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the, shadiest of them all.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like wholesaling has a bad name for a reason, because it is shady. But like you said, I think like you don't go into deals for you guys thinking like we want to wholesale. It's on, you're really wholesaling your overage, right? You get a bunch of deals because you're good at marketing, and then you can't build on them all. So you're going to try to, make a good deal for the seller, but also get something in the middle for bringing them in a good buyer. Have you, you actually deal with a lot of wholesalers. The first time I actually met you, I think we saw each other, like we were both in a wholesaler's house at the same time. What do you think that dialogue is like, in terms of wholesaling? What's that industry like when you're buying in a wholesale setting, when it's not your own marketing?
I like to say I'm completely numb to it now, but I guess I pretty much, like it's like crazy to say it. I don't really believe much. There's a few out there that I feel like do the right thing and are transparent, but the majority, I always go into it on edge.
Yeah.
And I could tell you, different stories of, they said the tenant wasn't there, and then we did a walkthrough and they, play it off like they didn't know.
Yeah.
Whether it's daisy chaining, going from one wholesaler to the next, who actually has the deal. So it's very, we try to go through the weeds to figure out the actual situation, but 9 times out of 10, it's usually not transparent, and you have to try to, catch them in any which way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to note, because I think there are people who can be really good wholesalers and do really well as a full wholesale business, but the only way you're going to succeed long-term is doing it the right way. If none of us as investors trust you as a wholesaler, like you're just going to keep selling one-offs. It's not a good business. I think that's why we see what you said in the beginning, like contractors who go into their first flip, they're usually not great at the business end. They're great at construction. So when they try to do their first flip, they're either underspending or overspending on all the wrong things, because they're not thinking like, what's the out buyer want? How did you guys perfect that process? Because I know you have someone who will list for you, that you have to sell on the market, and your renovations are clean. They're built for multiple people to be interested. How long did it take to really understand that there's, different houses require different types of renovations?
I felt like we learned that pretty quick. So we've been, the construction side is probably the hardest side of it, especially at scale. It's very hard to, do multiple projects or dozens at a time. It's just tough on especially multiple states as well. But I just think staying to the, on that budget any which way you can. You got to stick with the basics, the main things, kitchens, baths, etc. Exterior, facade of the property, and you have to sacrifice somewhere, because you could go down the rabbit hole of, hey, this is a brand new renovation. Everything needs to be new, roof siding. But no matter what, when you go to sell it, the home inspection is going to pick up something. The seller's sorry, the seller's going to pick up something. So you're never going to win that game. So you got to try to stick to your numbers as best you can, because most of the time, unless 2022 happened, the ARV is the ARV. So
yeah. Especially now, I mean, don't you feel like that when we're judging ARV now going into 2023, we're looking at comps that don't really apply as much as they used to. We really have to take like a haircut off the comps just to make sure we're good on our numbers. Are you guys seeing that now with what you're buying now and looking at what your after repair value might be in a declining market?
Yeah, for sure. So our strategy has changed recently. When 2020 hit, that was when we kind of scaled. And then the market basically scaled, went, the up way for those 2 years. So we were taking on excessive projects almost to the point we wanted to basically break our system. Like, what are we missing? We were taking on new constructions at levels, probably more than we could handle, but we were riding that, wave. And now we're kind of taking the complete opposite. So we're scaling back. We're not taking on as many permitted projects. We're wholesaling the excess. We're trying to not go over a dozen anymore.
Yeah.
And then pivoting to a little bit more wholesaling and lending, obviously still flipping, but just, running those ARVs.
Yeah, I think for people who are good at the marketing like you guys are, and you bring in a lot of opportunities for yourself, and a lot of yours is also word of mouth. People know you. I think you realize at some point that wholesaling out some of the deals to investors that is going to be a better, per cost per each deal than trying to work them all. And if you only have X amount of crews, is that what you got up to? There's just too many deals, not enough hands to go around, right?
Yeah, which we didn't mind, 2 years ago. It was kind of like, hey, The land's going to go up regardless. So if we could take it, we'll take it. If not, we'll just sit on it a little bit. Now you can't really play that game. You can't just catch the falling knife. So yeah, if you can't be, on timeline, on budget, it doesn't pay to take some of these. So wholesaling it, make a small fee, and give someone who has less projects is kind of where we're at. If we can't be efficient on our end.
You said something else that's important, the small fee. I think too many wholesalers are trying to hit a home run on each deal. It's like if you have excess and you're just hoping you can get a 10 to 20 spread. Sometimes hopefully you get more, but then you transfer it to somebody who is going to do a good job. That's better for the industry. I hate looking at the wholesale deal and knowing they're trying to make 70,000 and they've done nothing to even help. The tenant doesn't even know them. The owner barely knows them. That's where the scammy part of it comes in. Have you guys found that you're able to do more of the marketing yourself, which helps you not have to work with wholesalers as much?
Yeah, for sure. So we get, I would say 80, 90%, in-house, whether it's word of mouth or our own acquisitions and, our team. So that definitely eliminates wholesaling, that how we pick up some, but we'll still do it here and there. We try not to look at, I guess, the fee on their end as much because I don't know the whole situation, but we do get could get a little bitter if they're trying to make 70 and then the flip profit's only 20. That's where it gets
that's what I mean. I'm all for making as much as you can, but that usually means if their in price is too high and they're trying to make a lot, these things all don't go together. You can't sell it out, especially now looking into a declining market. I think they're going to be a lot in trouble who are used to just kind of putting down a wholesale contract at whatever the person wants and then trying to sell that. You're not going to be able to do that now. The wholesale price is going to be too high, automatically.
Yeah. And I know. Yeah, it goes back to transparency too. As long as the fee's there and the seller's okay with it. If not, that's where it comes into back to the scammy part.
Yeah. So I know, obviously, because we've known each other for a long time, that you guys eventually started to look outside of New Jersey. What led to you guys expanding to Florida? Because I think it's interesting when a company is buying homes in one area. You guys started in Rahway, but now you're buying a lot in Florida. What was the transition like, and how's it going?
It went well. So definitely a little bumpy. I guess part of it, two reasons. So one was lifestyle. So we kind of have this lifestyle, mindset where we wanted to live and invest. I always wanted to move to Florida. I lived here about 10 years ago. So I'm back now just on the West Coast, but we kind of looked at it like we could invest here while we live, and it's like a lifestyle type business. Looking back on it a year later, I don't know if that's necessarily like true. I think we don't technically need to live. I don't technically need to live here and invest here, but I do want to live here.
Yeah.
So I guess the transition part definitely a little difficult. We had projects up north. We have a better system, better team, especially on the contracting side.
Yeah.
Down in Florida, it was a little bit slower. So it was not going to say a tough transition, but it's definitely a slower transition. And I don't know if that's because we're just getting there, so we have to build out all those systems again, or if it's Florida in general, it's harder to get contracting work. I feel like it might be a combo of both.
I lived there 14 years and did a fair amount of projects there. I'd say it's probably Florida adjacent related. I was a prosecutor at the time of Hurricane Andrew, and there were so many unlicensed contractor cases after that. It was like one of the most serious things. It's just always been like a shady-ish area, just because Florida in general is pretty like transient in nature. But like you said, it also provides the lifestyle and scale for investors. It always has. So I think it's interesting. So you started West Coast of Florida, and now how many things do you have going in Florida versus New Jersey?
So right now we may be selling a few. We were going to keep a few Airbnb. So we have like a handful of projects going on down there at different stages.
Yeah.
As opposed to Jersey, we have, and PA, we actually expanded into, we have probably closer to 15 up north. So almost 3 times, at least 3-4 times the amount. So we may stay in Florida. I think we're just going to keep it at a smaller scale and do like a slow growth instead of, up here, we kind of did 2x, and then almost 5x. So I don't think we're going to repeat that in Florida just from, the year and a half we've been there. It's kind of just slow and steady, and then more where we want to live.
Yeah. One thing I think I know a lot of listeners will want to understand is, how did you put the financing in place, like when you started buying? And then what does that look like as you scale a business to 15, 20 things at a time? Because financing options in the beginning are a little tougher, but then as you have more evidence of your proof of concept and what you do, financing becomes a little easier, discarding the fact that rates are out there or cash buying. But obviously, to get to the scale that you guys you're using some type of financing in the middle for projects.
Yeah. So I guess when we started, we use hard money or private money for majority, almost, if not all of our projects. Very, very rarely we come in with all our cash.
Yeah.
So we'll come in with some and then get private money, hard money, some type of JV split. However, we've been very creative and we've been very basic, but we always try not to have our money tied in regardless. Now that has never changed. So we've used some of the same hard money lenders since we started. We've pivoted to some others who have given us 100% financing on projects.
Yeah.
But even that comes with some type of contingency, like they'll only do up to $2 million, and then you have to, start coming out of pocket. So there's always an X factor. And recently, I guess I feel like the next year or two, I think money's going to be tougher to get, as it was like the last 2 years have been pretty easy. The deals have been the hard part. So I see that shift coming. So we are, I guess, on our way to put together our first fund.
Oh, great.
Yeah, fund all our deals. So we're trying to get that up and running with basically by the end of this quarter. So that's one change we'll be making, I guess, this year.
I think it's smart. I mean, how many total deals have you guys done? It's a lot. I think that provides the evidence and background to build a fund and have people go in and say, like, look, there's all this evidence of what you've done. You don't have to really sell yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So we're upwards of over 80 deals now in basically the last 4 years. So
that's awesome.
The last 2 years have been majority of those. The first few years was only like a handful. Yeah. So that's where I guess the track record will come in. I think the fund, we have our investors that been with us. So I think the fund, it's just right timing for us. I probably should have done it sooner, but we're here, and
now's a good time because, like you said, money costs more now. So if you can get private money through the fund and they know that there's a return there, and you guys also know how to buy, you have evidence of knowing how to buy the right properties because they're profitable returns. So that makes a fund, I think, pretty easy to do. And I think a lot of investors are looking for that now. Maybe they can't acquire the properties, and do the work themselves. So dunking it into a fund with a sure return and like a little bit of, I guess, personal interest in it is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. And a lot of it goes back to like when we started, I guess one harder part is the track record. So is that skin in the game aspect. Everyone wants you to come to the table with something, and that's understandable. But at scale, that just doesn't work. It's tough to, because then you have to tap into like operational money, and then it gets like dicey. Where if you have a proven track record and you pay investors back, I just think a fund is a good middle ground.
Yeah, I think so too. That's good. I like that. Now, how big is your team overall in terms of full timers?
I would say about 20. It's probably about 10 or so, I guess, managerial / office type, and then we have a construction crew, in house, and then we're basically partnered up recently with a second contractor, and he has a few crews. So between that, I would say roughly 20, and then handful or so VAs.
Yeah, that's interesting. For people to scale out, how do you guys use VAs in your business? We use them a lot in my on market. I've used them off market as well. I find that if you train them well, they can do a great job for a very limited price, and everybody's in on a win-win. How do you guys use VAs? Is it on the acquisition end or kind of project management?
More on the acquisition end. So my partner Michael and Ronnie recently made him partner this year. He's been with us for about 4 years. And then we have an acquisition guy, Jagger, who handles. So a lot of it is on the front end, marketing, a lot of the scraping the data, cold calling side, follow ups. So it's pretty heavy on that end. We do have a designer that we use, sporadically on projects, but majority is on that marketing acquisition end. That's where we like heavily focus on the, getting the properties. I feel like that's where it starts.
Yeah. Well, in terms of like list building, how do you guys target areas? What data are you looking at, or is it personal preference in terms of when you're, either in New Jersey or Florida, how are you picking the towns? And then what data are you pulling? Like, what's your list look like compared? We all run different lists. I like to switch them around, but it'd be interesting to know what your target is.
Yeah. So my partner handles a lot of that side, but a lot of the list, it started when we started in Jersey. It was kind of like, we're in Rahway, and then we just wanted to be within like 45 minutes to an hour. So we would kind of go anywhere. And then at scale, we just slowly got rid of, some areas. North Jersey, we just stopped going to. We, focus more here, south. And then we would pull lists based on zip codes of like how many cash deals are in that area, recent sales, like stuff like that. And then as far as list goes, he handles some of the lists, but it could be, tax liens, water liens, a lot of vacant properties, not owner occupied. So different lists like that. And then expanding to Florida, that was kind of a data move as well. So we looked into different areas, like what was going up, how many people were migrating to the areas with the U-Haul data, stuff like that. And that's how we landed on the west coast of Florida.
Yeah, I mean, population growth is always in there, but it looks like you're looking at a lot of data, being choosy. I mean, in the beginning, we're all just like, where do we want to flip, or where can we get a good deal? But I think to go out at scale and do 80 projects, you're not going to be doing that many if you mess up the data. How many, are you doing mailers, cold calls, texts, all of the things together?
We are. So we've probably done everything since we started. So, and we always shift based on, kind of what's hot at the time, I guess. So we went from direct mail marketing. We were heavy on that. And then we focused more on SEO and cold calling after that. And we kind of compare each one. And then we got into text messaging. That seemed to be hot for a bit. So I feel like it's always changing. And we just pivot based on, what the data says and the KPI say.
Yeah, that's really important. I think too many investors just will either buy something from a company that's just going to do one thing, but the best marketing is really to build your brand around the marketing. So if you're sending and switching off, those people, maybe someone gets a text message and then they're like, wait, I think I got a postcard a while ago. And then those things start to build together over time. Was it a little harder? I know you said on the contractor end it was, but when you moved, to start going into Florida, was it harder to develop those marketing plans, or did you just put the same people on the same jobs and that started to turn up the same way?
So same people, same jobs on the front end. So that's, that's a little bit, I guess I would say, simpler for us. So we could, it's kind of just scraping data, cold calling, like our acquisition team, they close a lot remotely. So as long as we have pictures, we could, at least put in some type of verbal offer before even seeing the property. So that's a little bit easier. Once you get to the contracting end, I feel like you have to be a little bit more on top of it. You need boots on the ground, or you need a contractor you trust. And up here, we have a few of those. Down there, we're still, in that build out stage. We went through a few of them already. It just hasn't been as efficient as it's been up here, but I'm officially moved this month. So I guess I have a decision to make. Do we want to scale it down there now that I'm there and could build those connections, physically live in there, or we kind of just want to?
And the first one that you got there was that hybrid living, because the first house that you bought was the one with like 2 properties and you were going to live in one. It was like a small house, ADU and a big house, right? Yeah.
So that's finished. Yeah. So it has a 1-1 kind of like ADU on the side, and then it's a 4-3 house with a pool. So right now it's plan is to Airbnb it and then live in the other one. That's where I am now. And if it doesn't work, like a long-term rent, both of them would be a second option, or sell it and kind of do it. So it's a good, we're trying to look at that from all angles now when we're buying the multiple exit strategy. So we value add everything. Yeah. And that property was same thing as a three exit strategies.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's important. We've talked about that on other episodes. Like, you can't look at a property that only has one exit strategy right now. You have to leave yourself with those possibilities. So you're going to live in the 1-1, try to Airbnb the 4-3, but like then I mean, a 4-3 is always a good long-term rental also, because you're going to get families who are likely to take care of it and then buy a house at some point, or want to buy that house, which I like that as well. I think that's interesting. Have you figured, like, on all you said in Florida, you're looking to do Airbnbs a lot. Are you looking at those knowing like, oh, well, if the Airbnb doesn't work up front, we'll just turn it into a long-term rental and just wait for it to appreciate, right?
Yep. So the handful we're doing down there, they all have the same kind of plan. So we were going to keep 2 as long-term rentals, and then 2 as the Airbnb type rentals. We may sell the 2 long-term just with the market, pretty much at the peak, and just to get some capital. The 2 short terms, we're in between with them. So I guess we're going to run them the fall, winter. That's what I feel like, the hot months down there. The hot season, I guess, for Airbnb side. And we'll see what the numbers look like come spring. And if it's too much work, then plan B would be, flip it or long-term rental them.
Yeah. In terms of your Airbnb management, are you guys doing that, or are you outsourcing the management part? Because multiple Airbnbs is a lot. We've had Airbnb guests, and it takes a lot of upkeep. How are you guys handling that part of the business?
Yeah, so we only have a few Airbnbs. The plan prior to this year was to do that whole management and build it out. So we had different apps we were going to, start. But with the market, I guess from summer till now, with the interest rates going up so quickly, we may just pivot and not Airbnb. Because when we ran some of those on the rehab side, like prior to the rehab, we ran them at 7%, mortgage rate 6 to 7, and they're finishing basically now, some of these rehabs. And if you go to the DSCR loans, they may be closer to 8, possibly 9 or 10. So it may not make sense. The management side, like you said, it's a lot of work to manage Airbnbs. And if you're paying this high interest rate, it may just, the market's still hot down there. So I may just pay to sell it and revisit it when the interest rates get a little bit better.
Yeah. Interesting. After 80 deals, you of course talk like an investor. I talk this, everything's sellable to me, and I think that's what's interesting about real estate. You guys have scaled, so you're not really, going to get personally attached. But some people, I guess, when they're starting that journey, they like the houses almost too much. It's like, if the market's hot and you can see something that forecasts that might be harder, just sell the property and take the money and do something, that you can make more money with. I can tell by all our conversations, that's the way that you guys think. And I think that's really important for other investors to know. Like, you're acquiring assets that you can sell at any time, but you have to pick the right time to sell. If you let the market tell you when to sell, you're going to be in trouble, right? I mean, the market, you've already been through a big market cycle, and now we're going through kind of another one that I don't think is, necessarily that big of a deal, but it can affect what type of investment you use it for, or the financing, right?
Yeah, for sure. I try to. My team always laughs at me. I try to be emotionless on some of them. Just.
I'm the same.
It is what it is. It's just I try to be, numbers, always numbers, and timing. So try not to get attached to any property, even though it might make sense to live there. It is what it is. If it makes sense to move on and the market turns, you just play the market.
Yeah, and just go get another one. When you're at scale, there's just more out there, especially with you guys. If you're getting 80 to 90% on your own mailings or outtake, text messaging, then you really have more to choose from than having to, work with wholesalers and decide what's a good deal overall. So what areas of New Jersey do you focus on now, and what areas of Florida do you focus on, just in case people are interested in those areas or want to see what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so right now we're in mainly Union County, Middlesex County, Monmouth County, and we'll go to Ocean County. So it's pretty much middle, I would say central New Jersey. There's probably 10 or 15 areas that we'll actually go to, and we'll pick up deals. So we never turn down a deal, but we try not to go to like Essex or Bergen County as much. But if the deal makes sense, we will. As far as Pennsylvania, we're in right now the Poconos, Stroudsburg.
Oh, right. Awesome.
Yep.
I love Stroudsburg. I think that's a great. Are you guys doing Airbnbs there or flips?
The same issue. So we bought 2 of them, right? It's in the summertime. So we planned on Airbnb both, but now with the interest rates up, we may, I would say we may keep one and then flip the other. We may flip both and just not get into the Airbnb game. I think it's it's a saturated market as it is. So I think to be the top like 10% is our plan. But if interest rates, keep creeping, I think there's plenty of equity just to flip them and, like you said, put your money elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. PA is interesting. The taxes are so low for us compared to New Jersey. It's why a lot of us pivoted to Philly. But I've always I like those ancillary markets too. Bethlehem, Stroudsburg, Easton, they all look good to me. So, and then what about Florida? Where are you guys at in Florida? I know West Coast with St. Pete, Sarasota, Bradenton, those areas.
Yep. So mainly Tampa and Sarasota, and we'll pick up like the surrounding markets there at Bradenton, St. Pete's. So we try. Our main focus is like find the one area, which was Tampa, and then we'll go to like the same thing, like within an hour. Sometimes those sub markets have a little less competition.
Yeah, I love Sarasota. I lived there for 7 years and Fort Lauderdale for 7, and I think Sarasota is always ripe for Airbnb, but so many people also want to live there. It's just like, it's an easy place to live. So you have so many options, I think, when you renovate or flip in those areas. Awesome. As we close in and about halfway, let's get to some of these questions. I can't believe you've only been doing this for 5 years. You've really done a lot in 5 years. So that really can give people hope that like, you don't have to wait, 20 years of slugging it out if you figure out. Why do you think you were able to do so much in 5 years for newer investors who think the scale just looks too much?
I don't know. I guess the right mindset. I mean, I quit my job, and I think that gave me the ability to scale. So I wouldn't recommend quitting your job prior. Like, I don't know if I took the more. I don't know how to explain that route, but especially if you have a nice W-2 and you're just looking to pick up some rental property or learn along the way, I would say get some experience before you just jump in and quit. But then that said, I think me not having a job and just saying I'm going to go all in on this, I think that gave me the ability to scale as quick as we did. Yeah,
I mean, you've always struck me as someone with a strong mindset. So sometimes if you have that, like, okay, well, I'm just going to I'm going to make myself do this, and it sounds like that's what you did. You just put it out there and made it so it had to happen, or else you're going to have to go back to the other job, and you didn't want to, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then the other side of it is the team. So I think that's the most important in any type of business. Finding the right people. I mean, my partners are great. Our team's great. They've been with us for a bit now. I think that gave us we kind of have all the same mindset of core values. Entrepreneurs. So I think combination of quitting your job, the mindset, and the team. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. This actually plays into the team. It's question is, who's been your greatest influence in real estate and why? And you said not a person, but it was Bigger Pockets, which has always played a big role for me. I don't know if we either met at through Bigger Pockets or through an event, but probably somehow related to Bigger Pockets. Did you found most of your team through Bigger Pockets, right?
I did. So I think we definitely matched a Bigger Pockets. I sent messages, and then we might have met after that, and we recognized each other from Bigger Pockets. But so I originally, the very first house I flipped, my partner, Michael, who we kind of partnered up right after that house. He was a realtor at the time, so I met him on Bigger Pockets, and he was basically getting me into all the houses, and I was giving me the codes. I was getting in and then putting in offers, and then after we flipped that first one, we officially partnered up and started the company. And then I met the other guy, Ronnie, who recently became partner. He was hosting a Bigger Pockets meetup in Staten Island where I was living at the time.
Yeah.
And I think I showed up, and I think it was only three of us. It was me, him, and another guy, John. And he just kept doing it every month. And, a few of us started showing up, and it turned into about 5 or 10. And then he quit his job like a year later and joined us. So that's how we met both of them. And I met, a few other connections on Bigger Pockets, but I feel like between the education, the podcast, and then meeting my team, it's pretty much been, a lot of it's been through Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. How much do you think that the meetups have played a role? Because obviously we've done them during the pandemic. You were on a lot of ours, and you guys have your own in-person meetups, and so do we. What do you think that does for new investors and even for seasoned investors? I've always felt that the camaraderie of investors is so important because I don't find it to be competitive, but I don't know that people value meetups the way they should be. I guess maybe because they think people are going to be selling stuff, but like we both hate that. So how have the meetups played a role in terms of you guys also helping other investors find deals and learn about investing?
I think they're super important. I probably don't go to as much anymore as I used to. Now I started to, I guess, go back this year, but
yeah,
with the pandemic and stuff. But when I first started, I was going to them as much as I could. And I think it separates the people that kind of dwindle away. So like some of those investors, they'll come to one and you never see them again, and then you never hear from them. But the ones who consistently, showed up, because I don't think real estate investing is that hard. I mean, it's simple, but obviously it's hard work, but it's pretty simple. You just have to be consistent and show up. And I think those meetups is where you start seeing, who's actually, committed. And then that turns into whether it's partners, teammates, whether it's someone that you're wholesaling a deal to, at least them a little better, and you get a feel of the in-person stuff or on Zoom. I think it's super important, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, the trust factor is so important. Somebody shows up 6 months in a row and you're able to develop that relationship. You at least know more about them when you go into these, quasi JV partnerships or any other aspect. Because I think like investing is murky because of the trust level. We talked about wholesalers, but like there's tons of horrible investors out there, overpaying for properties, doing bad renovations, which makes our job harder. So the more you can keep connecting with other investors, I think the better. Yeah, Bigger Pockets has always been a big influence for me. And it's a great place to just, find local people and figure out then if you can build those trust relationships. On what is the most important trait for a real estate investor to have? This is a great one. You said delayed gratification. What do you mean, and how did you have to learn it? Because we all have to learn that at some point.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, I guess one of the bad advice you get from some people is that this is a get rich quick, or, come to my meetup or my seminar and I'll teach you how to make millions in a minute. And I think that's very misleading. And I think real estate's a get rich slow industry. So I think, the delayed gratification is super important. So if you're in this just to make a quick buck, I don't think you'll last in this industry. But if you, stick around and, grind through those years, and have that long-term, I always had that 10, 20-year mindset. I think that's super important. And that's what kept me going. When I started, I said, I'm going to try to build a company, and I have a 10-year goal of, building it. And I didn't want to flip 1 or 2 houses and, bloat about it. And I think that's what, kept me going and keeps me going is, the long-term mindset.
Yeah. I feel like most people who set 5 and 10-year goals and then they're consistent with their daily actions always achieve them in like a quarter of the time, because you're setting something out there that you putting processes in place to get there. That's obviously what I doubt in the beginning you thought you would have done 80 deals in 4 years. That's a lot of deals. You don't think like, how can the money even happen for all of these deals at that point?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, I try not to set 10-year, like, even if you don't hit that 10-year goal, or you're not even thinking of, at least you have like, where you're going, and it's a 10-year plan. So even if you fall short, say you wanted to flip 1,000 houses, you only get to 600, at least it's, still flip 600 houses. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
you know,
But you have to have something out there, else what are you working to every day? And sometimes it is just like getting the first one done. But then after the first one, it can't just always be one. It has to be something like either a little bit tighter in terms of like what type of money you want to make, or, you know, scale at some point. What is wrong with the real estate investing world right now? This one is one that a lot of us agree with. Too many gurus and unethical people. We've talked about it a lot. It's interesting, though. We've had a couple guests who have done paid for programs and done well on it. And I think I figured out, I know you'll agree with me because we've talked about this before. They paid the money, but they did the work. I think the problem is the gurus are out there selling stuff like, hey, just buy my program and you're going to be a great investor. You have to do the work. You can probably not pay and do it maybe slower, but I can see how it can work. But what are you thinking at when you think of like the gurus out there? What are they pitching to people that is making it harder for people like us to just do our job and help people figure out how to invest without losing money?
Yeah. So, I mean, my partner, Michael, he actually changed my mindset a little bit on this, because he's, you know, some of those things, exactly like you said, you can pay and you get value out of it. And sometimes people need to pay in order to get them motivated. But
just like you said, though, when you quit your job, it's like you had to have the money motivation, like I have to make it. And some people need to pay the money to say like, well, now I have to get the value out of it. So I agree. I get that. Sorry, keep going.
No, that makes sense. But I think when you get started, I would suggest like against that, you know, so I think, I mean, that's just my opinion, but,
Same.
You know, I think a lot of people should, if you're not going to at least read a book or learn how to flip a house or go to someone else's, you know, call up Jonathan and say, hey, Jonathan, let me come see how you flip a house. If you're not willing to do those steps, then I don't think paying $20,000 for a seminar is going to get you going. So I think first, you know, educate yourself and then at least do that 3-6 months and then start showing up to meetups. I think there's plenty of stuff you could do for free where you don't need the guru to, hey, you know, come to my seminar and you'll flip 100 houses. I think that comes later on, like those mastermind groups. Like,
I agree.
There's definitely value in those, especially the connections. But to get started, a lot of this you can learn on YouTube, podcast, and
I agree. And I think people pay for things thinking that they don't need to be motivated or they don't need to do the work. But no matter what you do, you're still going to have to do it or build a team. You're going to have to pay attention to it. I don't find real estate, I've said this so many times, I just don't find it to be like passive income. I know everybody wants it to be, but like, you know, if you're a flipper, if you have 80 deals in 4 years, it's not passive. Like that's just, it's a lot of work. Like you said, and I agree, I don't think it's hard. I think anybody can be a real estate investor if they figure out how to get the capital and how to understand the numbers. Don't you think, like, if you don't know repair costs, how could you do anything, especially going into this market? Because you could be so wrong about repair costs. You're going to get killed in this market.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's so many steps you could take, like I said, for free, where you don't need gurus, where you could actually understand those things. It's just simple as calling up a company in your area and just saying, hey, I want to shadow you for a week or something, you know, see, you know, to get the numbers down, or maybe go on the GC end and call a GC and see their numbers. But there's definitely plenty of steps you could do to get started. Like I said, without the gurus and without paying. I mean, if paying motivates you and that will get you to show up, then, you know, I would say go for it. But I think the showing up part is the hard part. That's where you lose a lot of the people at the beginning. They just come and go. And
yeah, I think you can see that in the forums too, like where we both really made connections in Bigger Pockets, and in the forums, like you can see what people are after. Are you there to add value, make connections, or are you looking for someone to just like green stamp your terrible idea? That's what I see a lot. Someone says like, you know, they're just looking for a yes. You know, they want an echo chamber of, is this a good deal? And you're like, it's a terrible deal. And they're like, oh, you're so mean. What are you talking about? I'm saving your money. It's a bad deal. I don't want the deal. It's like inherently a bad deal. Like you just said that there's a structural problem and you think it's going to cost, you know, $2,500. I think there are a lot of what we said. It's the delayed gratification thing that you talked about. They don't have that. They want the instant gratification of quick flip, quick profit, or become a wholesaler, become a flipper. And I just think, like you said, you have to think longer term. I just really, going back to what you said in the beginning, I think it's really cool that you going into your first flip, you're like, I just want to flip one house. Like that is a great mindset to have. It's going to expand over time, but like that's how to get started instead of like, someone's in the middle of their first flip trying to think how they can get to 100 doors. Like you're not close to 100 doors yet.
Yeah. There's I guess there's a balance between analysis paralysis and then, delayed gratification. Obviously you don't want to learn about this industry for a decade and not do anything, but, but you don't want to, set unrealistic expectations or try to, flip 100 houses in a minute and make, and retire next year. So it's definitely a balance and, could be misleading. Some of these, some things you read and see. So I guess got to be careful with who you're getting some advice from.
Yeah, you talked about analysis paralysis. It's interesting because so many people fall into it. One thing you mentioned that I think is the way to not get into it is when you met Michael, he was licensed, he could get you into houses. Like, don't you think that the most important thing is just like, you have to see a lot of houses. How can you be investing before you even know what the things are inside each house? Like, I still learn something every time I go into a house. I don't think that ever stops.
No, we get new lessons every project, and we've been doing this since a handful of years. But no, for sure. I probably got into dozens and dozens of houses before. I mean, we were putting in offers, but before we got our first one, I was analyzing 10 properties a day just to get the numbers down, trying to get in. I mean, I was on the construction side prior to get a little knowledge of, what it costs to, actually renovate the house. So yeah, there's plenty of steps you can take, just on the learning side and, being in the game.
Yeah, I just feel like you can analyze and analyze. You were doing it both. You're going in, then you're analyzing. And the best antithesis to analysis paralysis is viewing. And if then you do the viewing and then you analyze, then you just, 4x your game right away, because now your analysis has some basis in real life instead of like, playing a game of The Sims that you've never really seen the house, don't know the area, and you're just calculating per square foot things, which never apply in a state where we are in New Jersey, or where you used to be since you're leaving us for Florida. Before we hop off, one thing I like to ask every guest is if you could give new real estate investors one way to stay more mindful in the process, like to just keep their head together, what would be one thing you would suggest for them based on your experience over the last 5 years?
Man, more mindful, like to not give up.
Yeah, any way that you think helped you kind of stick to it. Yeah, I mean, if you go through a bad deal, how are you going to get back, stay on track? Because bad deals fall apart all the time. People get all excited over something, think it's the best deal in the history. It falls apart. Got to come back and be looking right away. How have you combated any of that? Like the thoughts of leaving, even though you scaled up, things can't go perfect all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it is tough. It just, you got to stick with it. I think the experience alone, it goes back to that delayed gratification. So if the first flip doesn't go well, or you think you're going to make, 30 or 40 and you make nothing, I think what you'll learn through that is, you can't replace the experience and actually going through it. And if it doesn't go well, you got to keep going. You got to just get the next one. You're not going to get rich off one deal, and hopefully, you shouldn't lose everything off one deal. You may get a couple things. You may get a lesson and stuff, and you got to keep going. There's going to be bumps in the road. This is, there's so much going on in flipping that eventually you'll miss something. But if you play the long game and you stay in it with that 10, 20-year mindset, I think in the end you'll win.
Yeah, I mean, some people will pay that 20 for a class. So if you lose 20 on a renovation, just make sure you learned your lesson so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That makes sense. I would say if you're going to pay it with experience rather than, taking a class for sure.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So where can people get in touch with you guys? I know the website, I have it up here, freedomhomebuyers.net. Is that has everything, New Jersey and Florida, and the best ways to contact you guys?
Yeah. So that's pretty much directed towards sellers. But yeah, our contact information is all in there. Our team's on there. If not, you could, shoot me an email. That's my email is on there as well. Or you could get me at Ryan Saulle. That's Ryan Saulle @gmail.com. I'm always open to talking real estate, and I'll send you some other links as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've been deleting the E from your pronunciation for years. I'm glad you finally told me.
I don't think anyone pronounced it. So I
Yeah,
kinda,
it's just a softie to me, but now I got it. Yeah, and
Yep.
on Instagram, you guys are going on Instagram as well. Is it just it's Freedom Home Buyers?
Yeah, freedom_home_buyers.
Yeah,
We're there
somebody
as
stole
well.
it before, so I had to use the underscores.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'll share some of those with you. But yeah, I think the website, Instagram, or on Facebook as well. But
yeah,
trying to be a little bit more active on social media. But
yeah, I'm sure you got people for that. You're busy.
yep.
You're busy. Awesome, man. Well, it's great talking to you in this forum. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge. I think there's a lot of good stuff that people are going to be able to take from this. And hopefully we'll be meeting up again in real life soon.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be back. Not this month, but maybe I'll see you at the end of the year.
Yeah.
December or so.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I will leave all those links in the show notes so people get in touch with you. Thanks again, buddy. I'll see you soon.
All right. Appreciate having me on. Talk soon.